It's a day at the theater for the Planet Express crew, though their viewing experience is far from ideal. During the film, Bender picks a fight with another robot in the audience who turns out to be the famous Masked Unit, champion of the Ultimate Robot Fighting League. But in a magnificent stroke of luck, as the Masked Unit stomps forward to crush Bender in his massive hands, he slips on Bender's spilled popcorn and is knocked offline by the impact with the floor. Coincidentally, the League's commissioner also happens to be present in the audience, and he offers Bender a job on the spot. Leela, recalling how her own dreams of being a champion martial artist were shattered by a misogynist instructor, takes on the job of Bender's trainer and helps him prepare for his first bout. The training works, and Bender's debut has him demolishing his opponent to the cheers of the crowd. But his elation with his new abilities is short-lived, as after the match, the commissioner informs him that the League is a scam and all the fights are fixed. Victory always goes to the most popular robot. The realization that this means he's popular reignites Bender's enthusiasm, but leads to him blowing off his training with Leela, as he concludes he won't need it. As time goes on and he wins fight after fight, Bender's meteoric rise to the top of the League seems unstoppable, until the commissioner calls him into his office. Bender's popularity is slipping, and he's now scripted to lose the championship bout. Angered, Bender declares that he won't take a dive, only for the commissioner to call in his opponent, the massive killing machine known only as Destructor, who is now determined to destroy Bender for real. Back at the Planet Express building, Bender relates his story to his friends and begs Leela to train him again. Already hurt by him abandoning their training before, Leela initially refuses, until she learns that Destructor's trainer is Master Fnog, the same misogynist instructor who ruined her championship dreams as a child. Her grudge taking hold, she promises to help make sure Bender can win. The day of the championship soon arrives, and Bender is hopelessly outclassed. As her friend is beaten to an oily pulp in the ring, Leela discovers Destructor's dark secret. Fnog didn't train him, he's controlling him remotely. Infuriated, she attacks and the two do battle. Ultimately, Leela emerges victorious over Fnog, but Bender loses his match to Destructor. Picking up their damaged robot friend, the Planet Express crew head home. When it comes to your dreams, you win some and lose some. Welcome to Space Podcast 3000, where the future is in the past.
So, Hermes has a brain slug now.
He has a tendency to get brain slugs, it seems.
He's always getting into trouble, but I thought this was a phenomenal episode.
It was very funny, yes.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is, according to the DVD commentary, which I remember listening to at one point, Hermes having a brain slug was actually supposed to stick around for the rest of the season, but they just kind of forgot about it after this episode.
Makes sense, I guess. I mean, maybe the joke might have gotten old, because, I mean, I like Hermes as he is. I like Hermes great as a character. I feel like that would have lost a lot of comedic potential. I feel like the joke would have gotten old.
We could pretend the rest of the series is the brain slug controlling him still, but he retains more intelligence the more the slug eats.
Well, yeah, I really like Hermes. It's just, I thought that was kind of interesting that they planned for it to be a season-long arc, but just completely forgot about it.
It happens.
You'd be surprised how often stuff like that happens.
I guess so.
The idea got eaten by the brain slugs.
Although, so the whole opening act of this episode honestly feels less like a logical progression and more like and then this happens. Because, first Hermes is a brain slug, and then the gang ditch him to go to the movies, to go to Lowe's Alethplex, and then Bender just picks a fight at the theater and gets recruited into the Ultimate Robot Fighting League.
It feels a bit like the way that they would write Simpsons episodes, yeah. It's kind of like a reverse completion principle.
Arbitrary point A goes to point B, and so on.
Yeah, although I do have a lot to say about the movie theater bit, because that's a great scene.
I just like the use of you notice the use of the word smizmar in this episode at least twice in different contexts, which is weird.
Yeah, I was gonna point that out. You've got on the marquee, "When a man loves a smizmar," and the writers really do seem to like this word because they do reuse it a lot. As you pointed out, later in the same episode, we have that announcer saying, "Ladies and gentlemen and smizmars." Here, it just seems to be maybe an alien gender thing. But then, much later, we have an episode where Kif gets pregnant, and I very distinctly remember...
And they define exactly what a smizmar is.
Yeah, and it's something completely different. It doesn't match with how it's used in this episode. So it just seems like a weird alien word that some writer came up with and just really liked.
Yeah, sometimes nonsense words are fun to say.
I guess. Personally, I prefer this interpretation of it just being a weird alien gender thing, because that's exactly the kind of world building I was hoping for in multiple previous episodes.
Am I a smizmar?
I like this. I like the world building that they use in the Kif episode, honestly. I think it's a very nice use of the word, because it's a term that needs to be defined, because you can't really define it with any English word.
I guess not, but it's just, interesting seeing how it's a completely different definition.
Yeah, exactly.
So getting back on topic, it really bothers me that Amy just is like, I hate subtitles. Alien films are always so pretentious. Because, I know there's that stereotype, but foreign cinema has plenty of lowbrow trash, too. It just doesn't get exported as often as the really good stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you can look at anything. It's like, oh my god, this is so great because it's foreign. It's like, no, there's plenty of foreign crap too.
I think it's supposed to be hypocritical because Amy is an alien.
Well,
She's from Mars.
That's true.
Yeah.
Technically, yes. But there's also, I guess, that whole joke on the stereotype of foreign films.
Yeah.
But that's really just selection bias, because the really good, really artsy foreign films those are the ones they're exporting, because those are the ones most likely to be successful.
Although nowadays, more stuff gets exported.
That's true. But, especially at the time that this episode was made.
Yeah, you very rarely saw that many foreign subtitle movies in the cinema. Either it was dubbed, and it was kind of left in the B-movie stuff. You would see a lot of kung fu movies that would do that. But any of the really huge ones, I remember Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon was just this massive phenomenon back at the time. And that was just subtitled, but it was such a different sort of interpretation of this martial arts film that it just became this huge phenomenon.
But the movie theater scene has so many great jokes. I love the MST3K gag of, Fry snarking about the pre-movie shorts, and you've got, the little MST3K silhouettes, and then you've got a cameo from Crow and Tom Servo.
Of course, yeah.
And, in that same scene, there's the continuity of the cameo of Miss Universe from, very recent episode.
Yep.
And was that the same Miss Universe on the previous one? Was that the same winner?
Yep, Miss Vega. And they're going to destroy humans now.
Yeah,
of course.
Apparently.
Well, what is he going to do with your winnings?
And then we have, All My Circuits, the movie. And I love the opening credits because just not only is it a James Bond parody, but you've also got, so many gags with, the credits themselves, written by Writing Unit 5 and Writing Unit 12 and Joe Esterhaas.
Yeah, he was a writing machine.
The fun fact, in movie writing credits, there is actually a difference between when they have the word and when it's an ampersand.
When they have an ampersand, yeah.
Yeah, an ampersand denotes that they were writing together as a team, whereas the word and denotes that they wrote different drafts. So in this instance, Writing Unit 5 wrote one draft, and then Writing Unit 12 and Joe Esterhaas wrote another draft together.
Neat.
Yeah, so when you're reading writer credits in films from now on, now you know that and how to interpret the difference.
I think it's funny, with the masked unit. He's big and macho, on the screen, but in person he's generally polite and, well articulated.
Yeah, because he's playing a persona.
Yeah, it's a character. It's kayfabe. And we can get more into that a little later when we get into that plot. In the meantime, there is another thing I wanted to bring up in the movie theater. All My Circuits, the movie, seems to be this automated multiple choice movie sort of thing.
Or maybe they're faking it.
Possibly, but, that whole thing, it makes me think of, because this has been tried before. The technology has really only been there more recently with stuff like, Black Mirror Bandersnatch. To have something like that. But there, were attempts at that before. like it's not a movie, but Charles Dickens wrote an unfinished short story because he died before he could finish it, The Mystery of Edwin Drood. And I believe there's a stage musical adaptation where at the end they actually ask the audience to vote on whom they think the murderer is because the original story never got that far.
Well, in 1995, there was a movie called Mr. Payback that actually was an interactive movie, and when you pay for one ticket, you actually get to see it twice because you don't know how the story's going to play out.
Huh.
And yeah, the movie itself is only like 30 minutes long, so I guess it would kind of suck to pay full price for only a 30-minute movie. But it was an interactive film, and I don't know what they ended up doing with it. I don't know if it's been like released on DVD and you have like interactivity with it or anything. But it's just something that I know about. I've never actually seen it, but from what I understand, it's just this guy goes around getting revenge on people, and you get to vote on what method of revenge he uses on them.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is mostly kind of like a sci-fi comedy, but I don't know too much about it other than that.
Yeah, it sounds like it's just based very much around its gimmick. Although, actually, an example that I remember from my childhood, how much SpongeBob SquarePants have you seen?
I'm only really familiar with the memes.
Oh yeah, where you'd vote on what was the canon ending for when they were in the Flying Dutchman. That one, right?
Yes, that's the episode I'm going to bring up. The episode Shanghaied. In reruns, it just plays like a normal episode. But when it first aired, it was an hour-long special that they were calling You Wish. And the whole point of it was, that our main characters are kidnapped by the Flying Dutchman. And at the end of the episode, he's threatening to eat them, but they manage to corner him into giving them a wish. And then the audience was basically told to call in this toll-free number and vote on which of the three characters should get the wish, and that would change the ending of the episode. And, they aired the episode the one that won the vote, and then they also aired the other two, but then, in reruns it just played like a normal episode with the ending that everyone chose. And I believe at this point the only way to watch the full original special is on the DVD, but they kind of did that sort of thing. And then there's actually an even earlier example that I only learned about recently. In 1922, a silent film called The Power of Love released. And it was not only the first ever 3D feature film, it also let the viewer choose which of two endings they wanted to see by looking through only one of the two colored lenses.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, because, that's how 3D movies work, where, you have it played two different shots from slightly different angles with slightly different coloration with the lenses in your glasses. In this case, one was red, one was, I think, green, it said when I was reading. And yeah, it was like at the end, do you want to see a happy ending or a sad ending? And then it would tell you which lens to look through. Where instead of being two different angles of the same scene, it was two completely different scenes. And interestingly, this was, as I said at the start, 1922. This was 5 years before The Jazz Singer, which means 3D movies predate movies with recorded dialogue.
Yeah, and that was almost 100 years ago.
That is crazy.
It's wild. And it's also just blew my mind that not only are 3D movies that old, but that the first 3D feature film also had a multiple ending gimmick.
They've been doing this kind of gimmicks for a while. There is stuff where they would have different smells. There is stuff that they would have actors in the audience doing this stuff, which you really can only really do on kind of a smaller scale. You can't do that in major worldwide releases now without spending an exorbitant amount of money to get contractors around the world to do this stuff.
I mean, you can if it's like a theme park, but that's more of a small scale thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if it was for all the seasons, but a number of the seasons for the Total Drama series, they'd have different endings for each of the two finalists.
Oh, see, that's not a show I ever watched, so I can't really say anything about that. But that's interesting. And I know that there's at least one show where they filmed multiple versions of the finale just to avoid the cast being able to spoil which one was going to air.
Which is not unheard of. They actually did that with The Simpsons. With the Who Shot Mr. Burns, they animated several different scenes that just so the animators didn't know which one was actually going to be used.
Makes sense. But that's, it's a very different sort of thing. Anyway, should we talk about Ultimate Robot Fighting?
Oh, yes.
Ultimate Robot Fighting!
Yeah.
Let's go.
The whole thing, it honestly just feels like a joke about professional wrestling being fake.
Which, I mean, it is. And there's sort of a... they understand that it's fake, they understand that it is showmanship, but there's still a lot involved with it. It is about putting on a show, it is about entertaining people.
Yeah, but, the whole thing about people not knowing it's fake necessarily, everyone always knew that professional wrestling was fake. Let's be honest. At least as far back as...
Absolutely. The real joke here is the fact that it is not only fake, but rigged, and they're taking bets on it, which is the real, oh my god, moment of this. Yeah. Is this is all fake, and we're using it to cheat people out of their money.
Yeah, that's true, but, as literally as far back as I can remember, everyone always knew professional wrestling was fake. It was a running joke where people would say, that's fake, right? And it's yes, people know. They don't care because it's entertaining. It's basically a soap opera, but with ultra-violence. Yes. It's all kayfabe for the sake of the performance. I don't know if everyone listening necessarily knows what kayfabe is, but it's basically the whole thing where they just kind of casually pretend that it's real, even though, it's obviously fake, and they don't necessarily try to hide that it's fake. It's just everyone involved acts like it's a real thing for the sake of the performance.
Yeah, which is, again, part of the performance. It's like when you watch a movie about boxing, the whole thing is scripted.
Yeah.
But, within the context of the movie, it isn't. They don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's for the sake of the story.
Yeah, it's just acting in a different form.
Yeah, but here they are actually presenting that as real because they're taking bets on it. They are taking bets in the sense that these characters have not been that these stories have not been written ahead of time, that they don't know what's going to happen, despite having these over the top personas that they take on and can be forced upon them by mandate.
Yeah. Honestly, let's talk about some of the personas here. I do really like the joke of the foreigner, because it's a great dig at, wrestling heels being treated as evil just for being foreign, which, it is mildly xenophobic and pretty gross.
Yeah, well, to be fair, they did pretty much do a good job of picking people that are worth your ire, especially the billionaire and the chain smoker.
I do wonder how many people nowadays watching this wouldn't get the joke of the chain smoker being a robot based on a cigarette vending machine. Because those don't really exist anymore, and I have only even the vaguest memories of seeing them when I was a little kid.
I remember seeing them. I never used them, obviously, A, because I didn't smoke, and B, because I never had the money to use any of them. And it's good luck to asking your mom for money to use one of those things.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's I wonder how many people watching this nowadays will get that.
And also these days, it's very rare to find a smoking section in a restaurant.
That too.
Yeah, a diner near me used to have one. It's no longer there. No longer part of it.
Well, yeah, smoking indoors is just a lot less of a thing because we know that it travels and you don't necessarily just need to be in close proximity.
Yeah, I think the most recent place that did have a smoking section was a Denny's I went to in St. Louis several years ago.
Huh. See, I think it's been a couple decades since I've seen anything with the smoking section.
Yeah, for most places, it's the smoking section is outside, so if anything.
Yeah. So Leela's sexist martial arts instructor, I just want to punch him in his smarmy green.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. He is a great villain because you immediately hate him. And he just revels in his evilness, too.
Yeah, I mean, at least he admits he's a lousy teacher at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
Right, which was part of his joke. He's part of you're a girl, so I chose not to train you properly. We have trained you wrong on purpose.
God, I hate Fnog.
Fnog is terrible.
I mean, yeah, it's really satisfying when Leela manages to kick his ass at the end of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
And so actually, while watching this episode, I actually noticed a background gag that I had never seen before, like in all the previous times I'd watched it. So after Bender's first fight, when everyone's celebrating his victory, if you look in the background, you can see Hermes trying to put a brain slug on the kid in the row in front of him, and Amy just stops him and shakes her head. Like, no, don't do that.
Oh, you didn't see that?
I had never noticed that before this viewing.
I wasn't sure if he was trying to offer it to the kid or if he was still kind of holding it out to Fry.
Well, you can kind of like see him like trying to place it on the kid in the row below him. But like that is such a great little background gag. They really get a lot of mileage out of Hermes having a brain slug in this episode.
They have one of the best lines in the entire series with the brain slug at the end when he actually does put one on Fry. And then it dies for starvation.
Yes. It's an incredible bit of dialogue.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, although that may not just be a one-off joke, that may actually be foreshadowing to what we end up learning about Fry and his brain physiology.
That's actually a good point. You know, if
maybe the brain slugs feed on delta waves.
Yeah, I had never considered that, but you might be right. Holy cow. Actually, something I forgot to bring up earlier, it kind of feels really awkward and unnatural the way that Fnog gets reintroduced into the episode. Just having him show up in the TV spot with Destructor, it just feels like a clunky way to just have him reappear and get Leela to train Bender.
It is a bit clunky, but honestly, it doesn't feel that out of place. It feels like the obvious payoff to what was set up earlier, because in my headcanon, I almost kind of say, well, I almost kind of think that the people that run this are actually extremely powerful and well-researched, so they would choose someone specifically to combat Bender, so they would, like, it's like, well, if he's being trained by Leela, we get Leela's old trainer again to train against him.
See, I don't think they necessarily do that, although that's an interesting headcanon. I think it's more just, an excuse narratively to reintroduce him, and in-universe it just feels really clunky. Like, it works for the narrative of the episode, and I don't know how else you would do it without having, like, whole extra scene eating up, more screen time that goes better elsewhere. I
guess he just changed careers.
Yeah, it just does feel weird and clunky. That being said, we gotta talk about the elephant in the room. The gender bender.
No, stop.
Yeah, ordinarily I'd be entirely on board with the whole gender non-conforming aesthetic, but the way it's played here, like that...
They play it here that it's making him the villain just because of the way he acts, but they also mention that they're trying to make people sexually uncomfortable with their own, what they think about him. It's like, I don't know if this guy is male or female, so I don't know what I should be feeling about him, so I will feel anger.
Yeah, the TV narrator outright saying, as he threatens your sexuality, let me be real here for a sec. If someone presenting in a gender non-conforming way somehow threatens your sexuality, you were probably never as straight as you think you are. Congratulations on your self-discovery.
Look up the Kinsey scale.
Yeah. But seriously, like, the way it's played here, like, that in itself is worthy of derision and mockery. That just really irritates me.
Yeah.
Well, it's played the same way as The Foreigner. They're picking on someone that may not necessarily themselves have any reason to hate them, but the common cultural aesthetic is like, this person is that the people fear what they don't understand, so they pick people like The Foreigners or gender nonconformists. And again, Bender is, playing a persona, so this is not even necessarily something that he reflects on.
Again, I'm not blaming Bender for this. I'm blaming, like, the people who saddle him with that character, and just the way it's presented does bother me, and just the way not even necessarily the in-universe, but, like, the way it's framed by the episode as a joke. It does lead into a punchline that I do like, where Leela's just like, I'm going to teach you how to fight like a girl, and Bender very seriously, without a hint of irony, says, I'll put on my tutu. That I like. The rest of the joke, not so much.
Like, it does have some good jokes.
The fact that he folds it off and places it neatly back in his compartment, hangs it on a little hanger.
Yeah, there are some light jokes that, do work from it. Like, conceptually, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just the framework within the society as being seen as a bad thing that's really not great.
Yeah, it's the way the episode frames it that bugs me, but it could be much worse. We've already seen much worse in previous episodes.
And we will see much worse later.
Oh, without a doubt.
Involving Bender.
Yeah, but in this case, we do get some good jokes out of it, and it's not terrible. It just does mildly bother me. Of course, then at the fight, we have the head of Impressionist Rich Little doing a Howard Cosell impression. Not even Howard Cosell himself, just Rich Little doing Howard Cosell. I love that joke.
Because they could have just gotten Rich Little doing Howard Cosell in a jar, but no.
I love the joke that instead of just doing Howard Cosell, they got Rich Little doing Howard Cosell. It's just the extra layer of the joke. I love it.
I love George Foreman next to him for no reason with brain damage from the head thing.
And his new grill that drains the fat into his mouth, which, ew, but how many people remember the George Foreman grill these days?
I do.
That thing is still around. I have one myself.
I do not have one, but I've seen it before. I watch a lot of cooking-related videos on YouTube, so I've seen it now and again.
It's a decent enough grill for what it is, but George Foreman is incredibly protective of it. Like, no joke. If you insult the grill, he will be legitimately mad at you. Like, that's not just a joke that they play in episodes like on King of the Hill, when he was on King of the Hill and Hank started talking crap about his grill. No, he will legitimately get mad at you if you say anything about his grill. Like, I remember he was on a talk show, and the host was just like, well, couldn't you just put a regular grill on like chocks or something to make it lean forward? And he was about ready to punch the guy.
And I wouldn't mess with him, He was a professional boxer.
Yeah, true.
I mean, I do like the idea of, a small personal grill for like cooking for one, because that's a lot easier to clean than a full-size thing. But, I've never owned one, I've never used one, but I do remember when it was first introduced, it was kind of a big thing, but I just hadn't really heard anyone talking about it in a while.
Yeah. I think a toaster oven just can do more with less space in general.
Probably.
Now we've got the professor's reading glasses.
Oh, God. Such a dumb visual gag.
Yes.
There's been a lot of fun visual gags with eyes and whatnot.
It's like the fact that his regular glasses were so freaking thick, it's already a joke. So let me put on my reading glasses. Like, what the hell?
Why, Zoidberg, there's a lovely picture of you in here. This episode it was a very funny episode.
There's one thing that, is only stood out to me because of, something else that happened recently. All them introducing Bender and Destructor with their weights, which we'd have no idea if they make any sense or not.
525 pounds is honestly pretty reasonable for someone made of metal that is hollow on the inside.
True.
I'd say that's not too far off, but
400 tons
seems a bit high.
Destructor is massive. I would not be surprised if he weighed multiple tons.
He weighs 8 million pounds, though.
Yeah, that just stood out to me because I was watching someone stream Donkey Kong 64, and there's the whole wrestling section in there towards the end.
Oh, 800,000, sorry. Not 8 million.
That's still a lot, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, at his size, I would not be surprised if he was that level of weight. But, I'm proud of Bender for getting in there and doing his best. He may have lost, but in the end he tried.
Shouldn't it have been a tie, though?
That is 3 Statue of Liberties.
I mean, the Statue of Liberty is a lot smaller than people tend to think.
But it's still bigger than Destructor would have been.
Probably, but, I mean, the Statue of Liberty is also hollow. And we don't know how
much does the Statue of Liberty weigh? 450,000 pounds. So, yeah, that's like 2 Statue of Liberties on this guy's.
We don't know how thick his metal is or what's inside, though, is the thing.
It would have to be made of, depleted uranium or something. Which, he might be.
Maybe.
It's also possible they didn't really think through the numbers necessarily and just went for what was funny.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. It's a ridiculously high number, and that's why it's funny.
Yeah.
I think that should have been a tie, because they were both down. But,
Well, if the Destructor is on top of him, I don't think anyone was paying that close attention.
Fair enough.
Earlier in the episode, we do get the shot where the common blackjack and hookers meme comes from. The original phrase is from much earlier in the series, but the shot comes from here, where he's kind of wearing his pimp jacket.
Mm.
And did he just ask to have sex with his two floozies in the ring?
Apparently.
Like, we're gonna wrestle with, but it's not gonna be wrestling in the traditional sense.
I mean, I got the sense that he was just bragging rather than it being a serious proposal, but yeah.
I finally got to beat up someone who hurt my feelings in high school.
Which I'm sure a lot of people can relate to.
Yeah. Me. God, that would be the dream, honestly. However, my body is weak. And I don't leave the house.
Alas.
I feel bad for the heads, being kept alive. They say they envy the dead, and you can see why.
Yeah, I mean, we already had Richard Nixon telling Bender it sucked in a previous episode, and now it's coming back. Yeah, I can imagine just being a head without a body would be incredibly dull.
They still have their dignity.
And it's more than just, being only a head, but, being essentially immortal now. And in some cases, being brought back from the dead.
Yeah, in many cases.
That's true.
But it is a great way of us having these celebrities from the past being able to cameo in the show that's set 1,000 years in the future. But then there's this whole cynicism to it. It's like, I am an abomination of God. Which is just, it is really kind of the dark humor of the series in a nutshell.
Yeah. I'm surprised they haven't had a Walt Disney one yet.
Ooh, yeah.
Or maybe, like, not necessarily Walt himself, but, some
Eisner.
Thinly veiled parody of Disney, given, Disney as a company is notoriously litigious.
Well, they had the Disney parody in the episode 2.
True.
Yeah. But nonetheless, there's always, the conspiracy theory of
keeping Walt Disney's head alive, yeah.
Being cryogenically frozen. Things are weird. Heads are weird. It's weird that they're alive.
I can't argue with that.
Thank you for listening to Space Podcast 3000. Your three voices of the future are Nova Altman, Doug Hancox, and Eden Valerie. The theme music is Voxel Revolution by Kevin MacLeod. You can hear more episodes of Space Podcast 3000 on YouTube, or at soundcloud.com/spacepod3k. You can support the show and listen to new episodes a full week early at patreon.com/spacepod3k. Follow us on Twitter at spacepod3k. Be sure to join us next time as the Planet Express crew explores Leela's origins in Bicyclops Built for Two.